decarbonized culture is about how do we reduce our greenhouse gas emission also in the cultural fields. So this is the second workshop of LeCake, which is led by the Shift project. So I will start maybe by remind some of you what the Shift is. So the Shift is a non-profit organization. We are an association which is committed to put the climate and energy stakes in the center of our economic world and in French society. So we aim at influencing the debate on the energy transition. So basically what we do is we write reports and then we try to influence decision makers. So politics, but also economic leaders and blah, blah, blah. We are about 20 in the Shift, but we have many, many volunteers, almost 20,000. So we have a lot of help from volunteers. We will go back to later if you want to talk about the Shift. This is not the main point today. So I will put I will go fast on the beginning. Why am I here? I'm here because I helped coordinate the report on culture, which was a decarbonized culture, which was one of the first reports with Julie's Bicycle, who will tackle these stakes in the cultural field. This is all the people who write the report with me, and you might see some of them when you come in Paris in November. So, energy and climate stakes in culture. So first, what is energy? When we think about energy, the first thing that comes in mind usually is electricity. When you think energy is like when you plug something and it gives you electricity to make it work. But energy is more complex. Energy helps you change temperature, speed, and shape. So basically, energy is at the core of all the world changing. And the more energy you have, the fastest your world is changing. So really, energy is making your world change. But this is a simple rule. This is physics rule. So I won't make it further. But what you need to understand is your bodies are the first converters. Energy is everywhere. So to have energy, we eat biomass, we eat food, and then our bodies convert it into power. So for instance, you have what power your arms gave you and what your legs gave you. Your arms gave you 10 watts of power and your legs 100 watts. Okay. So what does it mean? Because watts is like when you didn't do a physics course, it's like a really abstract. So for instance, you know this object. You can use it to make soup, etc. This object has a power of 400 watts. So if you want to make it work through your body, so through the first converter that exists before all the industrial time, we'll have to have 4 people on bikes, like doing all the work with full power to just make it work. And with the arms, it will, if you want, you will need 20 arms to make it work. Just to have a little bit of comparison. A vacuum cleaner a vacuum cleaner is 10 cyclists and 100 arms. A vacuum cleaner, just to make you understand. When you have fossil energy makes the energy you can use around you so much more powerful, because oil makes plane, buses, cars, boats. It enables you to use more powerful converter than your arms or your legs. So basically, what the shift's trying to say for 10 years now is that oil is giving you superpowers, because we all use superpowers through the way we move, the way we eat, the way we use machines, and all these machines that we use every day for everything. We use all the machines that are used in agriculture, we use it to eat. All the machines that we use to move around the world, or the machine that we use to live in buildings that have been built, all these machines, this is thanks to fossil fuels. So fossils are at the core, functioning of our society. And if you compare the power that the machines are giving you every day, it's as if 600 people will work for you, around you every day. Like almost 600 slaves are at your disposal every minute of every day in Occidental society. For the world, it's 200 only, but we are in Europe. It's 600. Just to make you understand what machines are giving us, what power they are giving us. If you want, so 1 liter of oil, what does it mean? 1 liter of oil, if you put it in a car, you can do approximately 13 kilometers in 13 minutes, okay? The power that is in 1 liter of oil compared to the power that your body, that your arms gives you, you will do the 13 kilometers in 2 months if you need to push the car. 30 minutes, 2 months. This is the difference that fossil fuels are giving you. So what you see here is globally the proof of what I'm saying. You see, the more oil we use, the more energy we use years after years, the richer we get. The more power we use, this is the more GDP we make. So fossil fuels make the economic growth. It has been like this since the end of 19th century. So what happens if we don't have any more fossil fuels? Globally, we don't have any more machines, so we lose our power. This is like the consequence of this hypothesis. So we spend our days using prostheses of a costume, which is made of fossil fuels, which are powering the machines that we use and give us superpowers. So no more superpowers if we don't have fossil fuels. Yes, but we have renewable energy. So if we replace fossil fuels with renewable energy, everything is going to be okay. Yes, but we had 100% renewable world before, which was before the Industrial Revolution. And a world which is 100% renewable, it can exist, it has existed. but it doesn't go as fast as our world goes, and it doesn't enable us to feed, I think, more than a few thousand, hundreds of people. So the 100% renewable world has already existed, but it was not fit for the world as we know it today. For instance, you have the part of energy that we use since the 19th century. So the first line, you see, it's biomass. Basically, it's wood. Wood to heat, wood to make trains work. So you see, we use wood before. Then we discover coal. And coal was really more useful to make trains go faster, to make electricity. Coal is the first thing that we put in all the electricity factories. Then we discover oil, and oil is the energy that we use for mobility. It's in the cars, in the trucks. It's really useful. Then you see gas. Gas was really useful to heat buildings because you have more energy in it than in the coal, and it was and in biomass, so it was easier to heat buildings with gas. And then you see up in all the bottom you have nuclear power, and then you have renewable powers. This is the little bit up there. So what does that mean? It means that there is no substitution. Humans are using more and more energy. As soon as they discover another type of energy, they use it for another use. There has been no replacement. And you see the carbon energy that we use is like 82% of the energy that we use worldwide. So you see, it's you've seen it when you did the fresque. The more energy we use, the more emissions we have around us. So you have all the emissions since the beginning of 19th century, since the end of 19th century. But it's okay. We have the Paris Agreement, so we're okay. Yes, I know it was a great moment, but you see, this is the Paris Agreement scenarios. The fourth, sorry, it's in French. So the above you have Scenario Politique 2010, Scenario Politique Actuel, so current politics of reducing emission of all the parties of the Paris Agreement, all the countries that sign it. And then you have some other scenarios. And down there you have the path to be below 2 degrees, the yellow path to be below 1.8 degrees, and the last one, the path to be below 1.5 degrees. So what we see that all the parties that take the agreements, all the scenarios that are currently in place, their politics, doesn't meet the agreement. So above it's the reality, and below it's what we signed for. So there is like doesn't match. But is it a problem? 5 degrees, is it hot? Is it really hot? Because 5 degrees, like what I go between 19 degrees to 25 degrees, it's okay, I just remove my sweater and it's fine. But not exactly if you think about climate. Climate is not weather. So you see, minus 5 degrees is the image on the left. And basically, minus 5 degrees, all Europe was under ice. There were kilometer and kilometer of ice in Northern Europe, like 5 meters of ice, 3 kilometers of ice. And then it was almost like Siberia below. So France was like Siberia. There were no trees, and it enables to feed about 1,000 people maximum. It was dry and cold, so it was a totally different climate than today, and the only difference is 5 degrees. So 4 degrees. What does it mean, 4 degrees? 4 degrees, as you see in all the red, you have half of South America, you have half of Africa, where every day of the year, you are above the deathly threshold. The deathly threshold, maybe you've seen it when you did the climate risk, is when you have so much, the temperature is below 37 degrees, but there is so much humidity, like more than 85% of humidity, that you cannot sweat. And if you cannot sweat, you cannot you cannot make your body cold. So if you're above 37, your body temperature, so you cannot cool yourself. So you die because you're too hot. So imagine how many people are going to live in places on Earth where every day of the year, if you go outside, you die. Imagine how many climate refugees is going to make, how many people are going to leave their homes. So 4 degrees is like very, very, very bad also. What about 3 degrees, which is currently the path we are on, 3 degrees. 3 degrees, as you see all the part in purple and in red, we're going to have problems. We're going to have food supply instabilities. We're going to have tropical crop decline. We are going to have permafrost degradation. So we're going to lose a lot of ice. We're going to lose a lot of trees. The sea level is going to rise. Bref, 3 degrees, a lot of problem also. And 2 degrees. So 2 degrees, as you see, is all the perturbation of the rainforest around the world. So they're going to have part of the world are going to make drier and drier, like all the Mediterranean Sea is going to be more and more dry. They're going to be more and more fires, water supplies problem. And there are to be part of the world where it's going to rain so much, there are going to be floods and all the kind of problems. So they are going to have a lot of perturbation. But the way we need to understand climate change, and I think you do now with all the things you learned in the previous workshop, that is not it's not like it's not a rise, a slow rise. It's like losing a step. It's all it's the intensity of the natural catastrophe that are going to be more stronger and more frequent. So drought, storms, heat waves, wildfire, acidification of ocean and sea levels. It's not going to be slow and easy to apprehend. It's going to be like really difficult to manage. And the difference, if you want, it's WWF infography, which is interesting because it's a comparison between a climate change of 2 degrees and a climate change of 1.5 degrees. Just to understand that what changed is not the content, it's the intensity and the frequency of everything happening. Like coral bleaching, acidification, water availability, and so on. So you see between the yellow stuff and the red stuff, the difference in percentage of risk of happening. The more the climate is going to warm itself, the more the probability of having a lot of problems are rising. But I think that you already knew it, and you will have the presentation if you want to see in more details all this stuff. So what do we have to do to stay below 2 degrees? This is what you saw in the climate first, but it means that we have to reduce by 80% our emission of greenhouse gas by 2050. It means that if we were to reduce by 5% each year our emissions, but what is 5%? 5% is what we had with the COVID in 2020, when we stop every economic activities for 2 months. This is minus 5%. So if we want to reduce by 5% each year, we will need to have another COVID every year. So this is just to have a comparison of what is at stake and what efforts have to be made. Reducing our emissions is not an easy. It's not an easy task. It's almost impossible the way our society is made. Just to make you tackle the challenge. So this is, and if we don't reduce by 5% since 2019, we need to reduce by 10% after 2025 in 2 years. The more we wait, the more we will have to reduce, and the more it will be problematic for society to adapt, because the changes are going to be so much that it will be difficult to do and to support. So here you have the carbon footprint of a French person. It's around 10 tons of CO2 by person per year. So in 11 years, we have to reduce it to 4 tons of CO2. And then in 20 years, we have to reach 2 tons of CO2 per person. This is, if you apply it to a person, this is the path we have to do. So we need a plan. That's what we try to apply for the cultural field. What does it mean for the cultural field to reduce its emission by 80%? So first we can ask, why do we need to do it? Because, okay, so every person needs to reduce by 80%, each economic sector, so okay, culture, but maybe there is some sectors that are far more polluting than culture. Now, first, why? Why? Because culture is a really important economic player in Europe. It's almost like agriculture. And there is a lot of people who work in culture, like 9 million people in Europe. So there are a lot of people. And what the hypothesis we had is that the culture is at the heart of transition, but doesn't know it. And that is not represented in the energy climate stakes. So here you have the classical climate energy representation, and it shows you the economic sectors that use the more fossil fuels and have the more emissions, basically. So of course you have transport, but worldwide you have also power, because you have a lot of coal factories, coal electric centrals. I don't know the English for centrale à charbon. Coal But the electricity is made of coal in China, in India, in US, and even a part in Germany use a lot of coal. Then there is transport, industry, and agriculture that use a lot of fossil fuels. And then building with the gas. We use gas to heat buildings. But we don't see culture. So is culture really, has culture an impact on the environment? And why does culture needs to reduce its emission if it's not represented in this chart? Because culture needs all the primary and secondary sectors to function. In its transport, it needs all this sector. And not only it has an impact, but it also has a dependency on fossil fuels. So it's at risk. First, agriculture and food. In culture, nobody eats, everybody eats. The teams, the artistic people, in venues, every public eats. So food as a significant source of emission in events is between 15 to 20% of the impact of cultural events. The food, which is directly linked to the impact of agriculture. Buildings. There is a lot of cultural buildings around Europe, museum, theater, operas, a lot of buildings. So these buildings need to be heated, they need to be refreshed, and they need to be repaired. And everything for this use machines, use cement, and every gas, and everything that depends on fossil fuels. So since culture adds buildings and use energy, it has an impact. Mobility and transport. We use a lot of mobility vectors to go around the world, to see shows, to see festivals, to make ones, to tour our artistic production. So culture and leisures are the third most important cause of mobility. In France, 64% of people goes to the cinema with their car, because everyone doesn't live in a city, and some of the cinemas facilities are outside the cities. So people basically took their cars to go to the cinema. Waste. There are a lot of waste in festival, and this is this summer some UK festivals. People leave the tents because they are so cheap, like maybe they are 10 euros tent. So everybody are leaving the stuff on the site. 25,000 tons of waste of all the music festivals in UK this year. 58% of people are saying they left their stuff on site. Digital. Digital for now is between 3 to 4% of the world emissions. It's almost like plane transport, almost like plane fields. And why culture has a link to the digital world is because 70% of what you watch online is cultural content. So European culture is at risk because it depends on fossil fuels, like any other sectors, but without risk measurement. But this was before the COVID epidemic. Now it has changed, and culture, I think, is a little bit more try to to measure more what's going to happen. So culture has an impact and a dependency on fossil fuels. So if energy and climate constraints call for a new way of thinking our economy, a new way of thinking our transport, or mobility, or buildings, our industry, the way we consume energy, the way we use digital, of course, cultural activities needs to restructure itself also. This is one of the slides that I present you. So the report, the main objective of the report was to say how does culture is going to reduce by 80% its greenhouse gas emission. So we published in November 2021, like 2 years ago. So things have changed since the report. But the main measures that we are pushing and the way we think cultural events needs to decarbonize itself, I think might be still relevant. But we will discuss it, I think, for each chapter. We will discuss what some cultural actors did, what we can do next. Maybe this measure is not relevant anymore, or this is maybe almost a bad idea. But we will discuss it together during the next online sessions, and also in Paris in November, through more case studies and practices. So what I show you during the first part of this session was that there is the first thing, there is climate change, and the fact that we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emission, and everyone must take a part in this effort. Then there is the other constraint, which is coming from the back. Is that energy, which is the source of our way of life and the way culture today is functioning, may not be forever. So the contraction in fossil fuel supplies, which is going to happen in Europe first, because Europe is the only continent that maybe has the less fossil fuel resources in its soil, is going to happen. I don't know when, but it's going to happen. So we need also to prepare for this contraction and to know how to do culture without oil. So these are the charts that I was mentioning to you before. So you have here the oil production of the 16 main country suppliers. So you have Norway, you have Iraq, you have Iran, you have Kazakhstan, Russia, and everyone. And you can see that all the oil production are going down. This data is done by an independent energy studies, which is named Rystad. And every oil suppliers are taking the data from them. These data are worth like €1,000,000. They gave us the data for a few €1,000 because our director knows them. He used to work with them. So they did. We didn't have to pay what the oil producer needs to pay Rystad to have this data. But these data are used by the oil producer. Just to know that this is not because we are some climate activists that we are going to show you the downfall of the oil production. Everyone has this data. And you can say to me that, we don't know, we can always discover some new some new oil resources and blah, blah, blah. But they roamed the world, and for now, they didn't find so much new ones. You can see, so globally, you see that we are, until 2030, the world won't have some supplier problems, but after 2030 is going really down. So we need to prepare. This is for oil. So this shows you the million of barrels that are produced every day. But there will still be oil, but half the way we need. And between agriculture and culture, I don't know which one the political people are going to decide who needs oil. This is also a problem. Who will be the first in line? I can't move. Okay. So, and now this is gas. So you have the North Sea producer of gas. So this is less representative of the world of production. But you can see that it's basically the same. Until 2030, everything's fine. But after 2030, everything is going down. And this is North Sea natural gas. But basically, if you look at Russia, if you look at China or US, this is the same. The gas wheels are old, and they are producing less and less gas. So basically, they are less. So what does it mean? It means that we need, it doesn't, we don't have to cry and say that life is over, but we have to be realistic. And so we need to be preparing for crisis and constraints. And you can see it's a plan B or just a plan. But if it exists, if something bad happens, you will be prepared. I think it's better than don't think about it and say, okay, it won't happen. I don't want to believe it. I don't want to believe that tomorrow there can be a world where I can have the energy I need when I need it. So if you need to make a plan for crisis and constraint, you need to take these two constraints into account: the emergency of climate change, the way we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emission. And there is something that is not in my presentation in the climate change adaptation. How do I adapt the way I do cultural events if I have heat waves, if I have flood, if I have fires? How do I adapt? And then there is the resiliency. How can I do my activities if I have less fossil fuels and it might cost more? So this is what we call the double carbon constraint. And this double carbon constraint, culture needs to take this into account. And this, what the report was to answer this double constraint. This is, I've already told you, a lot of people, a lot of money in culture. The fact that culture depends on other sectors, like agriculture, like mobility, like buildings, like digital, which are at the core of the impact and the dependency on fossil fuels. And so what are the main propositions that we did in our report? The first things to do, there are two things. First is training, is exactly what we do. Understanding what is energy, why we need it, and why is it at the core of our economic cultural field. what climate change means and why is it a problem. So understanding these things which are not easy to understand, which is not something that we learned during our school time or during our university time, is really important, because we need to understand this to know what to do next, and to understand the constraints, the dependency, the resiliency, and blah, blah, blah. So train, and train the others, and help other train, and make training program. And then there is policies. As an individual, the impact we have, if we want to be like the perfect ecological person, it doesn't change anything. It's like a drop of water in the ocean. It doesn't change anything. But if everyone moves together, it's really powerful. That's why we need the public authorities to be leaders on these matters, and to push the cultural sector, the European cultural sector, towards the same direction, with ambitious policies, through labeling, through financing, through incentives, because otherwise there will be like a few players who are going to be perfect, but like really small people in their corner, and it won't help the sector as a whole to move. For the sector as a whole to change, we need strong policies. We need ambitious ones. And that's why we have to do lobbying. And this is what the shift is trying to do. But the more people will want strong policies, the more chance we have that they will happen. So this is really important. And the Green New Deal in Europe is like really, really important, because this is what gave the push to the other European countries to move. So which dynamics should happen in order to have a more resilient and ecological culture in Europe? First, there was like 5 main dynamics that we push in our reports. First, it was relocate activities. Be careful, it doesn't mean becomes nationalism. It's just thinking local, not to do local culture with only your national culture. It's to think that when an event happens in your territory, you make it worth. You use maybe a local catering, maybe you use local people to work in your cultural event. You try to use this cultural event to make the local economy thrive through it. So you think territory, and then you try to make it count. You don't invite people for one day event. Maybe you're trying to make it stay 1 week and have workshop, and then maybe play in the next town. You try to make it worth their trip. Then slow down. Going fast is an oil economy. If you want to be renewable, you have to slow down. We can't do things as fast as we did if we want to share the world resources. So artists will continue to travel, but they need to reduce the number of trips, and they need to have longer stays. Then we need to reduce the scales, like monstrous events, a festival with more than 4,000 people will never be ecological. If they are saying otherwise, this is called greenwashing. Because the bigger your event, you need then to have a public that comes from the corners of the world, and to have artists that are really big, and they are international artists that will always drag people from everywhere to gather in one place. It's better to have small events that moves around rather than one big event that drives everyone for all around the world. You have to, but we will discuss this measure more in the next session. Don't worry, there will be debates and everything. Don't worry. Eco-design. This is about the waste we've seen in the festival image that I've shown you. But of course, we have to recycle, we have to think scenographic creation differently in order to reuse things, in order to stop wasting so much materials. And then there is the harder part, is about renouncement. Renouncement is hard, but there is some practices that have a really high carbon footprint. And we need to look at these practices, like these activities, and say, okay, do we keep doing it or do we renounce it? And if we don't renounce it, why? We need to really interrogate these practices and all the technology that might go with it. In order to help understanding these dynamics, we divided measures between different levels. And there is some measures that every cultural actors can put in place that are easy to do. It was the transparency measure. It's easy, it doesn't change the way you do your work, and it doesn't cost you anything. For instance, if I have a theater and I have maybe a cafeteria, it doesn't change my theater and the fact that I produce play and that I display them. If my cafeteria goes vegetarian, doesn't change anything. People are not coming to my theater because there is a burger in the cafeteria. So doesn't change anything. Maybe I will reduce my cost if I only propose like vegetarian meals, and it's easy to do. It's just a way of changing your way of thinking. This is hard, but this measure, for instance, doesn't cost anything and is easy to do. Then there is the positive measures. To stay in my example, for instance, if I'm staying in my cafeteria in my theater, not only will my cafeteria will go vegetarian, but they will also only propose local and seasonal products. So I will work maybe with farmers around my city. Maybe I will work with a different distributor, but in order to have a positive impact on the local economy. Or another positive measure, which is costly, is to isolate my building, because I will reduce, it costs a lot, but then I will reduce my energy consumption, and also I will make the building workers have some work, and I will give money to a sector that needs to be pushed in order to have the energy transition. Then there is the hard ones. The hard ones are the offensive and defensive measures. Defensive is not hard to do because defensive is renouncing. But renouncing is hard to do because it's changing your economic model. You can find yourself like losing some economic opportunities or not going in the right direction if you ban energy intensive option. So renouncing is really hard, but this is what we call defensive, and it's hard to do alone. Defensive is easy to do if it comes from national policies or European policies, but it's hard to do when you are a cultural actors in just as one player. And then there is the offensive measures that you cannot do alone. For instance, if I want to ban the policies of territorial exclusivity, if I do it on my own, it could be problematic for my structure and its economic model. But if a world region decided together that there is no more territorial exclusivity and they are going to work together in order to have a more well thought choice of creation, etc., it can be really, really powerful. But defensive options are really difficult to do alone. Sorry, this slide is in French. I don't know if I have it in English. I might find it. But this is the measures that I've just explained, but there is some example in it. But we will go back to it in the next session. Don't worry. So that's it for today. I won't show you the carbon footprints of festivals and theaters. We will go into it in the next sessions, but it was like to have the main frame of the report, of our report on decarbonized culture.